We're joined by Andy Raymond, Unfiltered. Andy, welcome to the show. And may I say, first off, I can promise you not quite the experience, not quite the wisdom of one Martin Devlin, but I can promise maybe slightly more reasoned debate and better structured arguments. I hope that suffices for today.
Well, it's a lovely change, Lockie, because I'm actually speaking to a bloody grown-up this week. For the last year, I've spoken to that man-child Devlin. What's wrong with little Suki Lala? Is his rash got worse or has he got man flu?
Oh, it's definitely a case of the man flu. I'll tell you this now. He didn't even tell me. I'll read out the text that I got this morning.
Yes, please.
Mate, I'm crook as been in bed since I got home. So this is a man who, as soon as we finish our shows, goes home and naps all day, which is fair enough. I mean, you would if you could. And then, I don't know, just doesn't give me much information, but hey, we take what we can get and we move forward.
Yeah, we move forward without the that little bit of Devlin craziness that we're so used to. Mate, the resting of players. Now, something has got to be done. Who are the biggest stakeholders in the game and what is the game about? It's the fans. It's not the broadcasters, even though they'd be peeved off too. It's the fans. And fans earlier this year from all around Australia have probably purchased tickets to the Broncos and the Storm in the final round, or to the Rabbits and the Roosters, or to the Dolphins and the Warriors, whoever it may be. And all of a sudden there's no Selwyn Cobbo. There's no Cameron Munster. There's no Harry Grant. There's no Adam Randall. I mean, I get it. It happens on a global stage, and I fully understand why the coaches are doing it. And what coaches and clubs do, they don't break rules. They manipulate rules to get the best result for their club, and that's their job. What the NRL's job is to keep everything as upbeat and transparent and positive for the biggest stakeholder, for the fans. So the rule has to be changed. It has to be changed. There's a bit of talk about, let's have a bye weekend like the AFL.
Yeah.
Well, rugby league would lose a lot of traction in a bye weekend, and the bye weekend would still not mean that players aren't getting rested the week before, because the coaches are worried about injuries. They're worried about Joey Manu, like he did last week, doing a hamstring in the most innocuous type of way. So for me, the rules have got to be changed. It is that simple. We can't allow this to go on. It's gone on at a reasonable size for 3 or 4 years. I think the NRL's got to nip it in the bud. I don't know how to do that, but I know why they've got to do it and why they've be for everyone listening, for us fans, not good enough.
Yeah, and I mean the Broncos and the Storm, which is, I mean, it's become a bit of a rivalry. It's a horrendously one-sided, particularly at at Suncorp, because the Broncos actually haven't won that game in 14 years at home against the Storm. I mean, Ivan Henjak was the coach the last time the Broncos did that. Half the blokes these days won't even know who that is, including the players. But I mean, you look at it's interesting because I can compare it a little bit to New Zealand rugby and the way they deal with it with Super Rugby, and there's always an argument that, the better rested they are, the better they'll be at the end of the year. Then there's the argument that, no, hold up, isn't it better to build momentum and maintain that? Like, the worst thing for the Broncos, I would actually think, the best thing would be to actually beat the Storm, finish the year on a high, get them minor premiership. Doesn't that give you, if that's your starting team, your Reece Walshes, your Adam Reynolds of the world and whatnot, Selwyn Cobbo, as you say, wouldn't it be hugely beneficial to them as quite a youthful team to actually play their best players, go out there, get that win, beat a perennial contender in the Storm, get the minor premiership and go again next week? I feel like that would be better.
I can't in clear conscience comment with authority on that. But what I will say is there's 17 players on the field for each club and 30 players within the club. Of those 30, 15 are probably better off having a rest and 15 are probably better off playing every single week in terms of, where your performance is going. So it probably changes per person, per club, per position even. But it's, I think it's gone beyond where we are on the ladder, where we can finish on the ladder. It's a black mark against the game as a whole. And I think And I think that is far more important than any win or loss over this weekend.
Yeah, I would think as well that, again, I'm sort of comparing this a little bit to New Zealand Rugby. The Players Association here for rugby has a lot of power, and I could only think that players, as much as a lot of them love to go out there and play, many of them love to have a rest and put their feet up and still get paid, not to be critical. So would a rule actually take place? Would the NRL play or the Rugby League Players Association step in and essentially say, no, the players want to do this, and then the attempt to get a rule to stop them from resting this last round not actually come to fruition? How much power would the Players Association have in that instance?
No, I don't think the Players Association would have any power whatsoever in an argument like that. And if they did, I would be taking it away immediately. The NRL and the Players Association have been at each other for 2.5 years. There's always going to be a divide between the two, but who is in charge of the game? The NRL is in charge of the game. So for me, it's their rules go to an extent. But for something like this, the NRL makes the rules and the players do as they're told.
Yeah. Andy Raymond Unfiltered with us here on the platform. Looking at this top 8, Andy, I mean, the top 6 are pretty much confirmed. I mean, it's not impossible the Sharks miss the 8, but a lot of things would need to happen that would go beyond the realms of possibility, to be honest, for them to miss it. So we're looking at 7, 8, 9, 10. Raiders, Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Roosters. The brilliant thing here is the Rabbitohs and Roosters play each other. The Raiders play the Sharks and the Cowboys play the Panthers. So you've sort of got these final contenders playing each other. Out of those 4 teams, as I say, the Rabbitohs, Raiders, Cowboys, Roosters, who fills out the 7 and 8 spots for the top 8?
I think Cowboys, Roosters. At this point in time, I think Cowboys, Roosters. I think the Raiders, without Josh Papali'i on the road, may have gone as far as they go. I think the Rabbitohs are vulnerable this weekend.
Free-falling as well.
I think the Roosters are on enough of a roll, even without, the crazy man up front, Big Jared. I think the Roosters are on enough of a roll to slide on into 8th position and then make a whole lot of footy sides nervous.
So the Cowboys beating the Panthers, you've got that?
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to know the exact makeup of the Panthers side until full-time in the Broncos Storm game. I think Ivan has got the opportunity to pull 4 guys out or 5 guys out of the starting 13. If there's an opportunity to win the minor premiership, I think they'll go for it. If there's no opportunity to win the minor premiership, I think potentially we see even more players being rested in that Saturday night game between the Panthers and the Cowboys. And all you've got to do is take Harris, Nathan Cleary and Isaiah Yeo out of that footy side and give them a rest, and the complexion of the game changes dramatically.
Is there enough of a reward, Andy, for the minor premier? You'd know the numbers.
Not.
Yeah, it's only like $100,000 or something they get, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely right. And they'll make $100,000 selling beer and sausage rolls in the grandstand at Penrith on Saturday night. So honestly, that's probably something that seriously does need to be addressed, and needs to be addressed in conjunction with the new rule of no resting players. However they formulate that rule, but making it more of a priority and more of a reward is a great start. You'd have to change up the final structure and maybe take a team out or even add a team in, but I'd actually like to see the minor premiers get the week off as well, the way they do it in the NFL. Yeah, well, that's what used to happen in the Final 5, the semi-final system that I grew up on. I think that changed in 1995 when the new teams came into the competition. It may have even been 94, and we went to, a 6 and then an 8-team semi-finals. I actually think a 7-team semi-final series with the minor premiers earning the week off is probably just reward. But what I would say is I think the NRL would go the other way and say, instead of taking away one semi-final contender, adding one, a top 9, but a top 9, but the minor premiers get the week off. So you've still got 4 games on that first weekend because semi-finals are money.
Yeah, exactly. Your Eels, Andy, out of the finals, and 12 months ago you were probably doing somersaults and jumping around. Top 4 finish, and you probably had a fair bit of confidence you guys could go far. You did go far. Where to now for the Eels? Because you've got, if I'm not mistaken, Brad Arthur had a contract extension not long ago. You've got a lot of money committed to Mitchell Moses. Is there a lot of flexibility with this roster? Does much even need to be changed?
Yeah, there is a bit of flexibility with the roster, and you're going to see quite a bit of player turnover. What Parramatta does have in its favour at the moment is in a couple of positions they've got significant depth and guys that haven't been getting a look in first grade, at least regularly, but on decent money. And for a point in case, former Warrior Jack Murchie, who signed with the Eels, he's already been let go to Huddersfield on a longer-term deal. I think there's going to be 5 or 6 of those guys that are let go on, say, mid to lower tier money, and that opens up the opportunity to sign 2 guys on mid to upper tier money, and then allow the natural process of a good junior base to take over, because there's some terrific kids coming through at Parramatta. I think some of them will be rewarded with a spot in the top 30, but I think there's going to be a bit of turnover at Parramatta. In fact, I know there is. But Parramatta's not the only place. We are going to see an absolute explosion of player changes, team changes, over the off-season. It is going to be phenomenal, and it will start as the international program winds up, and then starting the end of October, the start of November, when teams go back to training, that's when it's going to explode. There's going to be a lot of rugby league in the newspapers over this off-season.
Andy Raymond, Unfiltered, with us. Andy, just a couple more questions. The Wallabies in the Rugby World Cup, I love this, they get absolutely pummeled by France, and then Eddie Jones makes comments saying, oh, yeah, well, we lost, but I do know how to beat this French team. You just got to do this with kicking game and whatnot and that. And then you've got the prop Tani Latupo saying, yeah, we held a lot back, guys. Don't worry. We've got an Arsenal just waiting to throw at all these teams at the World Cup. Now, if you were South Africa or Ireland or France and you'd actually been in really good form for a couple of years, fine, you can hold something back. If the Wallabies are saying that they're holding something back, what on earth are they holding back? Bigger losses? Like, I find this really strange.
We as a nation find it really strange, and I've spoken to Marty a couple of times over the course of the year since Eddie Jones was announced as the new Wallabies coach. Eddie's been brought in to promote the game as much as coach this football side, and I think it's Eddie / promotion game and nothing more. That's certainly how I see it, and I tell you what, that's how a lot of Australians see it. Eddie is getting a reputation for a bloke that doesn't admit what's happening and tries to put a spin on everything. So not a good place to be just before the World Cup, but like, you've been around long enough, mate. You know how this all changes. It changes with results. If Eddie has a good World Cup, everything is forgotten, play on. If Eddie doesn't have a good World Cup, there'll be calls for his head before they've landed back home. Absolutely guaranteed. Yeah, well, they're lucky because they're on an easy side of the draw. And, I mean, you're right. I mean, the last World Cup, England were average going into it, and then they go and smack up the All Blacks, and all of a sudden Eddie's the ringmaster. He's just absolutely brilliant at his job. Right. How much, just finally, how much traction is the World Cup getting over there? I can only imagine with the AFL finals, the NRL finals, that people just aren't really talking about it, and people are still in a bit of a buzz from that Women's World Cup. Does rugby get any much of a look in at the moment? Absolutely nothing. And that is being really honest. The Rugby League, the AFL, we're talking World Cup cricket more than we're talking World Cup rugby. There's a good focus on And Postecoglou and what he's doing over there in the EPL. There is absolutely bugger all in regards to rugby. There's match reports. And that is about it. And this is on TV news, radio news. This is on the main websites or the papers. It's not just a selection. most people, in fact, a huge majority aren't talking about it, aren't thinking about it, and there'd be a fair old group that aren't even aware of it.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs when you compare to what Australian rugby was like 20 years ago.
At the moment.
Yeah.
Yep, Jeez. It is. It's terrible at the moment, which is sad.
Yeah. Andy, what's on the podcast this week?
Mate, terrific interview with Andrew McCulloch, the Bronco, the former Dragon, and we go through a whole lot of things. And we speak about his early days, and he was in the under-12 Queensland side with Ben Hunt, and also the halfback was a bloke who changed sports by the name of Chris Lynn. The cricketer was the halfback in the Queensland under-12 sides with him. We got the Rugby League Super Pod out tomorrow. We got the great Kevin Campion. We got Wade Graham, Wally Lewis, Adam Elliott, and more. It's a huge episode tomorrow. And the beauty of our podcast is you can listen to any episode or any interview at any time. It'll make sense. None of them ever date.
Timeless.
It's available wherever you listen to your podcast.
Brilliant. Oh, you're bursting at the seams this week, Andy. Wonderful. Thanks as always for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
See you, legend.